mentioned your anger because you had received a text message from the Biden campaign. Why is that?
So I received a text message from Joe Biden's campaign yesterday saying that the Supreme Court had overturned Roe versus Wade and that it was my responsibility to then rush $15 to the Democratic National Party. And I thought that was absolutely outrageous.
The woman you just heard from was a pro-choice demonstrator. Her name is Zoe Warren. And honestly, it is rare to see that kind of honesty, especially on cable news, especially on an outlet like MSNBC, which has consistently ran cover for the Democratic Party and its failures. And so I want to watch a little more of what she had to say in context. And then I'm going to support what she's saying by providing the receipts. She's a smart woman who knows exactly what she's talking about. Let's watch.
Something that struck me was when you were speaking earlier and you mentioned your anger because you had received a text message from the Biden campaign. Why is that?
So I received a text message from Joe Biden's campaign yesterday saying that the Supreme Court had overturned Roe versus Wade and that it was my responsibility to then rush $15 to the Democratic National Party. And I thought that was absolutely outrageous because my rights should not be a fundraising point for them or a campaigning point. They have had multiple opportunities to codify Roe into law over the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they haven't done it. And if they're going to keep campaigning on this point, they should actually do something about it.
Damn. I mean, where was the lie? Everything she said there was accurate, and I will provide evidence to back that up in just a moment. But first, it's worth discussing the kind of response that one can notice on social media if you come across that video. It's mixed. Half of the response is positive. People who feel the frustration, the very justified frustration over the Democrats' failure to protect women's reproductive rights. And I would argue that it's just another needle in the haystack, right? I'm not a needle in the haystack. It's a straw that broke the camel's back because they also abandoned Democratic voters who supported them because they purported to support police reform. They claimed they were going to do something about police reform. Well, that federal police reform bill fell by the wayside. Same with the Voting Rights Act. The Democratic Party, under the leadership of Joe Biden, with a majority in both chambers of Congress, failed to pass a voting rights bill, even though they campaigned on wanting to protect our democracy, even as they make a big deal, as they should, about the January 6th House Select Committee and its investigation into what happened on January 6th, when pro-Trump zealots tried to overturn the results of the election by storming the US Capitol. Now, that frustration is something that I feel deeply. Then you have individuals who love to provide cover for Democratic failure. Individuals who use the same talking points that we hear over and over again from the Democratic Party, which is, listen, we know that we haven't really accomplished anything for you. We know that we don't really plan to accomplish anything for you, but we're better than the Republicans, right? We're better than the Republicans. I would argue there was a time when the Democratic Party, in the bare minimum, would stop the bleeding. But voters today are gonna notice that they have less rights, and the stripping of their rights happened when a Democrat was sitting in the executive branch as the president of the United States, and Democrats had control of both chambers of Congress. Ordinary Americans are not interested in hearing about arbitrary Senate rules like the legislative filibuster. Ordinary American voters are just gonna notice, hey, is my life better or worse under Democratic leadership? And to be quite honest, it feels like we still have Republicans in charge. And the response we've gotten from Democratic leadership following the reversal of Roe v. Wade tells you everything you need to know about how ineffective and impotent this party really is. Now, before I get to the fundraising numbers, for all the critics of Zoe Warren, an incredible young woman, you might wonder, well, what's her plan? What's her plan? What's her plan? She doesn't want to support Democrats. What's her plan? She's actually quite articulate in regard to what we should do when it comes to electoral politics, which I've argued on this show is not the end all be all. But let's hear a little more from Zoe.
It seems like you have obvious anger towards the Democratic Party because you feel as if they've missed chances to codify Roe up until this point, and then here we are. What does that mean for you when it comes to the midterm elections and getting more Democrats elected to move forward with trying to codify Roe?
Well, when it comes down to the primaries, which I think are coming up in the next couple months, it means that we need to get as many people to the polls as possible to vote for more progressive Democrats. We need to get the old white Democrats out of office and put in new, younger people who will actually defend the rights of women and people all over this country. And then when it comes to midterms, we need to make sure that we have those same people who voted for the progressive people in the primaries coming back to the midterms and voting again, and making sure that these more progressive Democrats get into office and can actually make the change that we need.
Gotta say, strong, intelligent women like Zoe Warren give me life. Give me something worth fighting for in a country that increasingly is trampling over our rights. Now, I wanna add some evidence to what she's saying here because she's furious, as anyone should be, over how Democrats have both failed to accomplish what they have campaigned on, including the bare minimum of protecting our rights. And their attempts to essentially fundraise off of this, right? The amount of money they've managed to fundraise off of this after the draft opinion was leaked more than a month and a half ago. What have they done since then? They have fundraised. In fact, in just a few days following the leak of that draft opinion, which is a massive red flag, a warning sign indicating that Roe would be reversed, Democrats raised $12 million after Supreme Court leak of draft abortion opinion. Let's get into some more details on that. As The Hill reports, Act Blue, a small donor fundraising initiative that supports Democratic candidates, reported the $12 million was raised from the time of the leak, which was on a Monday night, through midnight on Wednesday. Okay, so over the course of 2 days, they raised $12 million from individuals who were like, what can we do to stop this? Okay, iceberg, straight ahead, what can we do to stop this? And the Democratic Party, of course, they sent their fundraising emails. The situation's dire, we gotta support the Democratic Party. And unfortunately, some unfortunate souls thought that this opposition party to the Republicans would actually do something effective with that money. But no, they actually ended up using that money to support anti-choice candidates, including Henry Cuellar in Texas. More on that in just a moment. But the Democratic National Committee's website, by the way, this is after the leak, now includes a pop-up for quick donations that reads, quote, there's never been a more important time to fight for reproductive rights and elect Democrats in every corner of the country who are ready to do the same, but we can't do that without you. So please give us your money. Give us your money so we can help Representative Henry Cuellar, a conservative anti-choice Democrat, get reelected, even though there is a progressive running against him, even though that's a tight race and there's a good chance she could win, Jessica Cisneros. But no, Democratic leadership did not endorse the progressive challenger to this conservative Democrat. They did quite the opposite. So let's talk a little bit about some of the response that we saw following the official reversal of Roe. Well, first off, the Biden administration is not at all interested in expanding the Supreme Court to make it less ideological. So a lot of left-wing pundits, activists have been calling on the Democratic Party to expand the Supreme Court, to dilute the conservative activist majority. But Biden's like, nah, I can't do that, I can't do that. Okay, what about doing away with the legislative filibuster that Biden has cited, that the Democratic Party has cited over and over again as the excuse for why they have failed to accomplish a damn thing, even though they have a majority? Is he willing to do away with that legislative filibuster? Is he willing to, at least in the minimum, reform it? And remember, the legislative filibuster means that you need 60 senators to vote in favor of legislation in order for it to pass, meaning anything we care about will be blocked in the Senate. Is Biden willing to do a damn thing about that now, knowing that women's reproductive rights are not constitutionally protected as a result of this right-wing theocratic Supreme Court? No, he's not willing to do that either. So in other words, he's willing to do Jack, but donate money to him. Because what? He's gonna give a sleepy speech. He's gonna call on Congress to do what he knows Congress cannot do as long as a legislative filibuster is in place. No. Let's go to Clyburn. What's Clyburn up to? Well, let me just note, Jim Clyburn, is the House Majority Whip who also endorsed Henry Cuellar in Texas, allowing Henry Cuellar, the incumbent conservative Democrat, to win in his reelection bid, even though there was a progressive challenging him who would have been far better. Did I note, by the way, that Henry Cuellar is currently under investigation for shady dealings with the Azerbaijani government? Seems like that could be a little bit of a liability in the general election, but it's okay. Clyburn and Pelosi decided to endorse that goon instead. But let me give you more. So Dylan Wells tweets, just asked Whip Clyburn about the Dobbs decision. It's a little anticlimactic, he says. I think we all expected this, and I'm hopeful, I have to read the decision to see exactly the extent to which we can move legislatively to respond to it. Hey, ladies, Democratic leadership thinks the reversal of Roe, the reversal of your ability to make decisions about your own body was anticlimactic. Donate money to that guy. Because what? What is he gonna do with it? Help support more conservative Democrats who are under FBI investigation for shady dealings with the foreign government? Is that where the money's gonna go? And as we know, that is where the money went. At least a portion of that money. Now, I want to fast forward to just how common this kind of failure is. And the Democratic Party gets very touchy over this type of critique toward Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, because the fact of the matter is back in 2009, he had a supermajority. First 2 years of his first term, he had a supermajority, meaning that even that legislative filibuster in the Senate was no biggie. He had enough Democratic senators. But then what happened? Well, in 2007, Obama said something really, really interesting. Okay, this is campaign Obama. We got to make that distinction. Let's actually go to the video, guys, okay? I want you to go to 2007 Obama. Okay, I believe this is the last video here. Just notice what he said he'd be willing to do and what he ended up doing.
Well, the first thing I do as president is sign the Freedom of Choice Act. That's the first thing. Freedom of Choice Act is not my highest legislative priority.
So in the beginning of that video, you have 2007 Obama, and in the end, you have 2009 Obama. Let me give you more context. In 2007, Obama promised Planned Parenthood that the first thing I do as president would be to sign the Freedom of Choice Act, which effectively codifies Roe v. Wade. Now he says the bill is, quote, not my highest legislative priority, as he put it at a recent news conference. This is from a New York Times piece in May of 2009. And then in that same piece, by the way, you have Obama capitulating to the right-wing zealots, to the theocratic authoritarians in this country to craft abortion policy. I'm not even kidding, let me read you. Obama is also reaching out at his direction. His top domestic policy advisor, Melanie Barnes, is convening a series of discussions with people on both sides of the debate with a goal to draft a set of policy recommendations by late summer. We're not interested in what right-wing zealots have to say about women's bodies and whether or not they should be able to control their bodies. Not interested in individuals who don't respect our Constitution, don't respect equal protection, regardless of what your identity is. This is a complete and utter disaster, not just for women. And let's be clear, the priority here happens to be the women who will suffer the consequences of the Democratic incompetence here. But let's also keep it real. This is a disaster for the Democratic Party. They are in denial about it. They think that everything, politics as usual, everything is totally fine. All we're gonna do is talk about the boogeymen on the other side, and people, they're gonna do as they're told, and they're gonna support us no matter what. Because what else? What other option do they have? Well, look, as Zoe Warren pointed out earlier, you can support anyone who is challenging corporate incumbent Democrats. And when I say anyone, obviously I'm referring to progressive challengers. That's why primaries are so important. That's why TYT does extensive coverage of the primaries, including the primary elections that'll take place tomorrow night. Make sure you check that out starting at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. But aside from that, if you're looking to financially support anyone, the last group of people you should be supporting are members of Democratic leadership or the Democratic National Committee when they have abandoned you, when they have not fought for you, when they've taken your money and they've done terrible things with it, including supporting people like Henry Cuellar. By the way, Pelosi and Clyburn supported right-wing Democrat, anti-choice Democrat Henry Cuellar after the Supreme Court leak. Now, they don't care about you, but that money could go to organizations that are helping women who are living in states where their abortion rights have been completely stripped away from them. People living in red states. So look into those organizations. Go to tyt.com/mybodymychoice. There are some resources there if you're looking to financially support an organization that's actually effective. I should also note that Zoe is with an organization herself known as RiseUpForAbortionRights.org. That's RiseUpForAbortionRights.org. And look, for the Democrat defenders on social media, if you think you're gonna shame women who are enraged today into supporting candidates and Democratic Party members who have failed them, you gotta think about a different strategy. Brothers and sisters, you gotta wake up. That is incredibly insulting. And I think it's really important for the Democratic Party to have a rude awakening regarding their failures. If we keep providing cover for them, they're gonna keep failing us. And they have failed us in the worst possible way.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.